Hey everyone, I am back to the channel after a couple month break. I've got something a little different for you today, different in a couple different ways. Number one, I've got a guest speaker coming on that I will introduce you to in a minute. Number two, this is a lot longer of a video than my normal stuff that takes about 5 minutes or so. You can probably see that on the bottom bar already. But we felt like in order to do justice to all the details of a pick and roll action, both defensively, offensive counters, etc., we really needed to talk for a lot longer. So I hope you stick with me because the mental part of basketball is really, really important. It's not good enough to learn how to just shoot and dribble. Those things are important, don't get me wrong, but you need more. So stick with me, stick through these videos. I hope you learn a lot from it. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed filming it. So without further ado, let's get to it. Welcome in. We've got a special guest here on the episode today. My brother, the other Coach Runk, slightly shorter, but still just as good at basketball. Aaron, welcome in.
Thanks for having me on.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do? Because I put out some video content, but you do some writing. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, I write on Substack. It's a publication called The Role Player. We focus on mainly, obviously, role players, but then we also delve into younger players in their first, second, third, fourth years, guys who are still developing, and try to highlight those guys, try to highlight the role players, bring some glory to the guys that aren't scoring 25 points a game.
I like it because that was me.
Yes.
It's a good read. I suggest it for anybody out there that's interested in good basketball content that's not mainstream stuff, because the mainstream stuff does tend to focus on the 25 points a night guys. And there's a lot of that out there, but not a lot on the role players. So I like it.
I've been told before that if you focus on the role players, you'll never have a very big publication because most people just want to read about the stars. But that's okay.
Yeah.
We want to cover the other guys too.
I get it. And I somewhat understand because I'm also focusing on a lot of youth basketball content with the videos that I do, and it's not big, it's not out there, but that's fine because I do this for my kids. I do it because it's fun, so
Yeah.
I understand.
Yep.
So we're here today to talk about pick and rolls, or more generally, ball screens. And the intention of this video is to go over kind of comprehensive look of ball screens, both defensively and then offensively, how you counter. And so I thought this would be a good topic to talk about to get the kids to understand on our team how all the different ways that we can attack defense based on the way the defense is playing it.
Yeah, it's like counters on counters. Like the pick and roll is so nuanced. Like it's the most simple action in basketball probably, but at the same time it's one of the most complex actions in basketball. So you can take it as shallow as you want and get something out of it, or as deep as you want, and it's still very, very complex. Listen to a guy like LeBron James talk about a pick and roll, and it's like way beyond my ability to even comprehend sometimes.
Yeah, that guy's seen a lot of pick and rolls, a lot of chances to evaluate it. What do you think? Pick and roll is probably the most used action in basketball.
Yeah, I would say hands down, especially at the NBA level. Maybe in lower levels, it's not quite, just because I feel like sometimes in the youth level coaching in high school, maybe some of those coaches are more old school. They just run whatever offense they ran when they were in high school, and so maybe they're in a more traditional motion style offense. But especially as you get into the pros and college basketball, definitely pick and roll.
I I watch a lot of high school games, and I am I've started to see it really trickle down to that level. So this
Mhm.
is a good concept for kids of even the younger ages to start to learn, because I think we're going to start to see it even more at the high school level.
Yeah, it's only going to keep growing.
Yeah,
The NBA
yeah,
kind of sets the precedent, and everybody kind of follows from there.
yep, yeah, that's right. So here's how I want to do this today. So you can look at a pick and roll in a couple of general ways in terms of the defense. Defense can cover it either with two guys or with three or more. Two probably being the most prevalent way to cover the action, and three-man defense or more 3, 4, 5 man defense being a little bit more complex. So I want to start with 2 man defensive actions, and from there break it down, what that defense looks like, the context in which it's going to be used, um, why a defense might use that particular coverage, what the counters would look like on the offensive end, and then offensive personnel situations that might influence those counters as well. So I want to go through each one of these coverages one at a time and kind of cover each one of those things, um, and we'll see how long the conversation takes. Probably a warning for people who usually follow my content, and it's 5 minutes long, 10 minutes long at most. This is going to be much longer, but I really wanted to make this comprehensive to give a good feel for it.
And I'll point out too, what, at first we're going to be talking about 2-man coverages, and I hope Jeremy coached his 5th grade team or 4th grade team last year.
Mm-hmm.
And at that level, if the play doesn't directly involve them, it gave them permission to fall asleep on the floor. And it's important to realize that the pick and roll, although there's 2 players involved in it, sometimes 3 in more complex situations, but at least on one side of the ball, it actually involves everybody. Like, everybody has to rotate, everybody has to be in the right position for the defense to effectively defend it, and for the offense to counter whatever the defense is doing to try to stop them.
Yeah, for sure. Especially as you see players progress in their ability level, you almost have to cover sometimes with 3 players to give that help, especially in a really bad mismatch situation. Yeah, for sure at the youth level, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade level, you're going to see players on the backside, on the weak side, really fall asleep on a pick and roll. But it's important to understand how to uh, adjust coverage and rotate properly on some of these actions, as you'll see when we get to the 3, 4, 5 man stuff, because it can get pretty wild and complex, and you have to be awake and see everything that's developing in front of you to be able to properly adjust to
it. One other thing that I was thinking about too when we first started talking about this, there are a lot of people think that maybe the 2 players involved in the action are the most important players, and I think that's probably true. But one of the other most important players is going to be the guy who's all the way down the baseline. So if the play is
on the
happening,
weak side.
yes,
Yeah.
yep, on the weak side, yeah, because the play might be happening at the top of the key, or maybe it's happening on the wing on the left or right side. Um, but that guy who's all the way in the back, he's the last line of defense to stop a layup. He's the one that's deterring. If the guard gets around the screen and he sees nobody in front of him, it's a layup. He's driving it. If he sees Rudy Gobert standing down there, he's like, I'm going to think twice about this, and he might back it up. Um, he might go somewhere else to try to because he realizes he doesn't have a layup there.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is this guy here on the backside. Um, as this pick and roll action develops, and you see this player dribble around it towards the basket, yeah, oftentimes this guy, especially if maybe this man's sucked up on his man, and he's number 4 here is not dropping back into coverage. This guy here's got to step up and stop that basket, which also then makes the guy on offense, coincidentally in this corner, really important for the action as well in that pick and roll, because all of a sudden he's wide open and he's very involved in the play, where previously he's standing half asleep on the backside just watching his teammates go. So yeah, this could get very involved, and we'll show some clips later on where you could just see the ball swinging like crazy once the defense starts rotating, because it involves everybody once you get going.
I have one other thing too before we move on to the actual 2-man coverages that I was thinking about. Each team has 5 players on the floor. The defense actually has a 6th defender, and it's the sideline. Try to use defense wants to use that to their advantage at all times, especially if the play is happening, and that'll be more important when we talk about something like icing later on. When the play is happening towards the sideline, the defense has a huge advantage to use that to try to as an extra defender.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Icing and there's a defensive concept most coaches, most teams try to employ of keeping the ball out of the middle of the floor,
Hmm.
so you can use the sideline. You can also use the baseline
Hmm.
as you're pushing a player away from the basket. That that baseline can also help you too.
Hmm.
Although some players are really good at utilizing that baseline and slipping around it and finding players cutting from the slot a lot of times too. So,
Hmm.
all right, we want to roll into it.
I'm ready.
Okay, let's dive into our first two-man coverage, drop coverage. To me, this is probably one of the most simplest forms of pick and roll coverage. It's probably the one that kids learn first, I would say. It's definitely not the most common at the NBA level, but it is at the youth level for sure. And that's where my lean is anyway. So
Hmm.
that's where
I
that's
think
one of
even
my
in I think
go ahead.
even in the NBA, it's still, if it's not the most popular, it's probably the second most popular
Be-
option.
Between that and switch, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. So let's first define drop coverage. Let me pull up our whiteboard again and just give you a picture of what it looks like first before we show some clips of it. So drop coverage to me usually looks something like this, where you've got the screener's defender standing several feet behind the screener, just waiting to receive this ball handler around the screen. I think the assumption is most of the time that the man that's being screened is going to get caught up in it somehow, and he's ready, waiting to swallow him up as he rolls downhill off the screen.
Hmm. Yeah, the bet in high school we used to run like a 3-on-2, 2-on-1 drill. It's a very popular drill. Most players who've played basketball have done this drill. And the 2-on-1 part, my coach always described it as a cat and mouse game, where you're trying to bait the guy who's coming down the floor to not take a layup, but also not pass it to the other guy to get a layup. You're trying to stop both of them at the same time. And that's kind of what the guy who's dropping is doing. Guys, like, if you really want to watch and see how do the best players in the world do this well, guys like Rudy Gobert, Brooke Lopez, they're the masters of this coverage. Consistently get they consistently take away layups while at the same time taking away the in this case, if you're looking at the screen, the four man who's setting the screen when he rolls, they take away his role too, which is very difficult to do. It requires elite footwork. It requires very, very good timing to know when to jump out and make the guard pick up his dribble, but also when to stay back and take away the roll.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of practice and drilling. I can't imagine how many hours Rudy Gobert has spent just like backpedaling and drop coverage drills.
He's so good at it in the playoff series with the Lakers. He was Lakers? Maybe in a different series. In any case, uh, it was against the Nuggets. He was really good at taking away that dunker's position too. So he was
Hmm.
essentially covering three guys at once. At once,
Yeah,
he's pretty incredible.
yeah. There's a reason he's won what, 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 4 now maybe.
Yeah, great rim protector.
Yeah.
So there's two variations of drop coverage within drop coverage. One of them being going over the screen as the ball handler's defender, or going under the screen. Let's talk about where you might employ those two different coverage types.
Yeah, so if you're gonna go under a screen, that's in my mind, you're typically doing that because the ball handler can't shoot. That like if he can't shoot from 24 feet or 20 feet, whatever the high school range is, there's no reason to guard him out there. You can play back a little bit, and when you do that, the key is then to cut him off from getting to the lane. Like period, you want to try to cut him off at the free throw line a lot of times by going under the screen and meeting him on the other side.
Yeah, I think Josh Giddey, or back in the day probably John Wall, guys like that aren't
Hmm.
known shooters, and so they start going downhill off a pick, and you just go underneath, cut it off.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And it sounds easy to do, and at the youth level, it's easier. I think in the NBA, it's a lot harder. Or if you're playing against really athletic teams, I'm not a very fast guy. When I was in high school and we we mostly played like a soft hedge coverage, so we didn't really drop. But when we when I was going under a screen against whoever, if it was a slow team, no problem, I could beat them there. But if I was playing against like some of the bigger schools in the area that had really really fast guards, I think they beat me there like 9 times out of 10. It was actually really difficult.
Yeah. I think that's where you see it a lot. If you go to the rec center on a Saturday morning or something, see all the old past their prime players playing. Generally, they get stuck in an under coverage when they just can't beat their man over. They're gonna get
Mhm.
absolutely whipped trying to go over it, so they go under it instead, which opens up the first counter to that, which is being able to shoot. If you can
Mhm.
shoot really well, you don't want to go under on that guy, which is why you
Mhm.
never see you never see anybody try to go under on a Steph Curry ball screen, for example.
Right.
He's going to pull that shot 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah. And you might see the big man too. He might roll into the guy going under. And so then it's kind of like he's setting it's kind of a moving screen, but it's not called as one. It's more
Yeah.
of just he's rolling and the defensive player is just trying to get back to the other side.
Yep.
So if he rolls into him, it's he can't get there. The guy that's guarding the roller isn't in position then most typically to cut off the roller, and so then it's a layup, or you're requiring some of your other defenders to go into rotation and stop that.
Yep. Yeah. I think specifically at the youth level, you see a lot of unders because the kids can't shoot as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you see them go under a lot. And the one thing I never really see the screeners do is do what you just said, which is roll to the basket and create that open shot for that player. Something
Mm-hmm.
we'll teach a lot more as a counter because we do see that a lot. Um, it's important to be able to you got to be able to create that space for your player without making it a moving screen, which is
Mm-hmm.
a tricky kind
It,
of
it
veteran move.
it's the epitome of like a role player move
Hmm.
to roll into somebody because you're not getting the ball. Like you're not going to get it. It's not coming to you. You're covered by two guys essentially when you're doing this. This is like the Steven Adams role. I feel like he does this a lot. Well, he used to with John Morant. He's not on the Grizzlies anymore, but when he played for the Grizzlies, like John Morant's really fast. He's not a great shooter. So a lot of players try to go underneath him um, and cut him off at the free throw line to keep him from getting into the lane. And Steven Adams is just like his shoulders are probably like 3 times the size of my shoulders, and when he when he rolls, like there's no way for a guard to get around him. He's so big. I feel like he's the first guy that comes to my mind when I think of this.
Yeah, it's a skill. There's big men that have perfected the art of getting in the way on that pick, whether it's totally 100% legal or not. They're very good at it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's another counter to this though. Like what if you can't shoot and they're going under on you? I've got one in mind, but I'll tee it up for you.
you lay it on us.
To me, what I would teach my kids to do, I think, because a lot of times we set the screens maybe a little bit too high. They get excited and they'll set that screen at 24 feet. None of
Mm-hmm.
them are shooting from there. I think it's a rescreen. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty simple. You draw your man under it. Now you're probably 4 or 5 feet closer to the basket. You teach your screener to come back around, set the screen going back the other direction. I could probably, if my computer would cooperate, reshare the
Jamal Murray
clipboard
and,
here.
and Nikola Jokic are really really good at this. They make music with their screening and rescreening and screening and rescreening and screening and rescreening.
Yeah, we'll find some good clips of it too. But yeah, here if you follow this, so maybe you get cut off here by the drop coverage. As soon as that happens, uh, you got both guys now sitting here, kind of waiting. All he needs to do is pull this screen back around the other direction, and then you dribble off this again, going the other way. And this can offer up a lot of benefits if the drop coverage guy gets stuck in traffic. If he hedges over here to cut this drive off, and the guy going under gets caught underneath, you can really open up one side of the court for your ball handler here to take a much closer shot, or maybe even attack downhill still if they're really caught up.
Yeah, the players that are really good at this, it's a really great way to get open. I feel like it's hard to do at the youth level. It's hard to conceptualize like what does this actually do for me. But when at whatever age you figure out how to do this, I think it's a really really good skill, and it's something that not every big man can do, and it's really up to them to be able to flip it, yell at your point guard, come back over, come back, talking to your like getting that chemistry down to know, okay, I'm not getting anywhere this way, and both the point guard and the big man have to be on the same page to flip it and go back the other direction. It takes good chemistry.
Yeah, 100%. And along those lines, I go pause for a second because I think a lot of kids, especially at the youth level, think that the screener is just like it could be anybody. You just got to roll out there, you hit the guy, and then you stand there. Well, it's not true. I mean that screener is vital to the play, and it can be a scoring position a lot of times depending on what the coverage is. You've got to really be on your game. It's not just hit the guy and then wait to see if the ball handler makes a play with it. You keep your eyes open, your ears open, so that you can help your teammate out multiple different ways to continue to get in the way and create a shot for him.
And just going off that, the angles of the screens are so important. I've heard you talk about angles 1,000 times with your kids, and that first initial screen and the players going under. If you're setting that high or you're setting it parallel, like you might normally do, if you're parallel to that screen, like in this case where we're watching right now, if he sets this parallel and the guy goes under again, yes, he's deeper down the floor, which is great. That's the whole point of a rescreen, is to get closer to the basket, and then maybe he'll flip again and get almost to the basket. But if four instead turns it just a little bit, just like a little bit where you had it, if he turns just a little bit more, now he's in the complete way of defender number one there, of
Yep.
being able to actually beat that guy around to the other side. And now it's all the way up to defender 4. It's 1-on-1 again instead of 2-on-1 or 1-on-2 or 2-on-2.
Yeah, we from the moment we taught screens and starting in third grade, probably practice number 2 or 3, we started talking about screen angles because it's not good enough to just go stand next to the defender and get in the screening position. You have to understand where you want to take the ball on that ball screen and screen at the angle that allows you to prevent that guy from getting past you. You're a lot wider standing this way than this way, so you want to be standing in the way of the direction that guy wants to go in.
Yeah, it's almost like the screener is the more important player in the pick and roll on offense than the guy with the ball, because if he sets a good screen, if the guy with the ball doesn't have good ball handling skills or can't beat guys off the dribble, as long as the screen is good, he can get to where he needs to get to score.
Yeah, I've seen some absolutely agreed. Yeah, I've seen some absolutely devastating screens, and players that aren't really great players still have a wide open layup because they set a great screen. It's can absolutely be the most important position on that particular play.
Yeah.
So let's talk about overs now for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So an over, let me reset all this. So an over is going to be where as opposed to the under, where the oh my gosh. There we go. All right. An over in this situation is where the defender is going to follow the ball handler over top of the screen. So let me show this with an arrow here. So instead of going under the screen, they're gonna go over it with number 1, kind of follow him around. Now, where do you think we'll traditionally see this play out? What personnel do you normally see from the offensive end that would dictate that a defense would go over on the screen?
Shooting. If the guy's a shooter, you absolutely have to go over 10 times out of 10. If you go under and he's a shooter, he's going to make you pay every time.
Agreed. And you don't even have to really get over in time to stay in front of the player. In this type of coverage, the main idea here is to just prevent him from taking that shot, because this guy here, number 4 on defense, is there to stop the layup. So you're not worried about the layup anymore. when you as a team decide you're going over on this guy, this point guard number one's a shooter. We want to go over on every single one of these screens. You're just trying to make it uncomfortable for him when he goes around that screen and wants to pop the shot. That you're right there on his shoulder with the hand up, maybe even kind of affecting the shot or even blocking it if you can get in front of it in time. You see this. I've seen a number of blocks. Might be hard pressed to find a clip of one where guy goes over on the screen, the shooter tries to pull up and shoot it anyway, and gets blocked from behind or from the side because it's it's a little bit easier to contest from those angles maybe than right in front of him even sometimes.
Even the best shooters, I mean, maybe not Steph or Klay Thompson or some of those guys, but most of the best shooters, if you're on their hip when they're coming off that screen, even if they can see the rim, if that defender is on their hip, it's a deterrent. Like they're probably not shooting that ball. Steph will, but he's a special case, Like if they can feel him there, it definitely gets in your head if I'm not as open as I think I am.
Yeah, I won't be able to put the video because of copyright claims, but insert clip of the that last shot that he made in the Olympics right here. I mean, that's a perfect example of it wasn't a pick and roll, but he had a defender planted on his hip and one in front, and he still took the shot and buried it anyway. He's ridiculous. I know if I have a guy on my hip like that, there's no way I'm taking that shot. I will never attempt it.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Too uncomfortable.
And that defender number one, the guy who's going over the screen, the guys that I think of that do this really well is guys like Drew Holiday, Alex Caruso, Jalen Suggs. I love the role players. Those guys are the ones who, like, they're the best at it, and they're all very athletic. Obviously, they play in the NBA, but the thing that really sets them apart is their effort level. For me, when you're going around that screen, you're trying to go over. It takes a lot of work. It's really hard. It's exhausting. If you have to go through multiple screens, like you want to stop every time. You're like, just switch. I don't want to do this anymore. But the guys who do it really, really well, those are the elite. And it requires just effort. It requires more than anything. Athleticism is important. Having long arms is super important to doing it well. But above all, and this really goes for defense in general, if your effort level is high and you fight to get through that screen, you're going to be good at this.
Yeah, agreed. I used to love going over on screens in my advanced stage though. When I am playing against guys that are a decade younger than me, I almost always go under now. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's too tough for me to get over it. I don't have the legs for it anymore. It is hard work. It's hard work.
It's very hard, and it's bruising because if you go under the screen, you don't generally get hit by the screener, or at least not very hard. If you're going over, and if they're a big guy, you're gonna get a shoulder, you're gonna get an elbow, you're gonna get something, and you might get an elbow from the guy who you're defending as he's trying to push off and get open coming up around that screen.
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes you even take the dreaded knee to the thigh, trying to get around it, leaning into it, hitch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's awful.
I think one thing we didn't talk about for going over offensively to counter it, the counters I think are a little bit different in some cases than what you might see if you go under the screen. We talked about being able to shoot. Obviously, that's the number one counter. But guys, it's more of an advanced skill. Devin Booker and Chris Paul are really, really good at this. If you go back and watch those Suns teams from a couple years ago,
yep.
Being able to snake the screen. So, and you might have to draw it up, but when they do this, they're coming off the screen. So if they're coming off right, they're going to come off the screen towards the right elbow, and then they're going to snake back around. Sometimes behind, sometimes in front of the screener. And what that does is because that number one defender is on their hip, what they're doing is they're sealing him off from getting back in front of him. And so that gives them full vision of the rim. And if the screener is doing their job, they're getting their guy out of the way too. And so now, in theory, if you're good at this and you can jump high and you have skill to be able to do this advanced skill, then you can shoot a floater, you can shoot a jump shot without anybody being in front of you.
Yeah, this I think of guys like Luka, LeBron. They're pretty good at it too. They'll come around a screen, and there's different names for it, but put them in jail basically, where the defender is hopeless. They cannot really do anything because at this range, this player could take an easy floater, leaner, whatever, and there's no way for the defender anymore to contest the shot. Once you get out in front of them like that, if you just keep contact with them, it's intuitive, I think, for most players in that situation when they make contact to be able to keep them behind them. You got to be able to feel it though. You see the best players when they come around that screen and they want to get in that situation, they'll slow down and they'll wait for that player to come around the screen so they can feel the contact and they know where they're at. Then they can better position where they need to be to keep them on their back and not let them back around in front again.
Yeah.
Which then for the screener, it becomes important for them to get out of the way and draw this drop defender with them, because worst thing that can happen is this guy just decides I'm done, stands right here, and now all of a sudden you got a guy behind and in front trying to take a shot, and you've got nowhere to outlet the ball to, because you likely, I don't have the defenders shown on here, but you likely got one here and one here and one here. Where are you passing the ball? So this guy's got to clear. He's got to get either to the short corner or to the block to draw this defender down and allow the ball handler to work his way up here and take that easy floater.
Yeah, he's got to kind of space the floor, and that kind of makes me think of another thing too. The roller, here we're back to the roller being very important. If he gets in the right spot, he can be a hugely dangerous offensive weapon. This is the time when on an over screen, this is the time when the screener can really get some points, because even if they're not putting him in jail, if they don't snake, maybe number one gets a clear lane to the hoop and he's able to attract number four. Having that pocket pass, like James Harden is really good at making the pass, and Joel Embiid is really good at getting in the right spot to receive the pass. If you watch some of those Sixers teams from the past 2 years, Joel Embiid will get in the right spot every time, and then he's got a wide open 12-footer because James Harden or Tyrese Maxey took both guys and he drew attention from both of them because they got off the screen and they got to a dangerous spot on the floor and attracted both those guys. So if you're the point guard, in this case the guy coming off, the ball handler coming off the screen, the key then is to draw attention, and if you're the screener, then the key is to get in a spot where that guy can actually see you.
Yep, roll to space is what I like to say, because when you say pick and roll, a lot of times players think I'm going to the basket. Well, not every time. You need to roll to where the space is on the floor where you can get an open shot. So yeah, that might mean that if the ball ends up over here and you have a situation like this, maybe you need to roll to this space here, not necessarily all the way to the hoop, because you're creating a tough angle to pass to. We'll find some clips and show them, but I think that that's a good point. You put that defender in jail, you can sometimes draw a second defender, and if you I put out another video this probably a month or two ago now of the easiest way to create a wide open bucket is to create a 4-on-3 situation, and this in effect does that because you've got 2-on-1 guy. That means you're playing 4-on-3 everywhere else on the court. You just got to find the right pass.
Yep.
So that's it for today's video. I got a lot more stuff coming out, but I don't have a production team, and I really didn't start to appreciate what those guys do until I started making these videos. It's a lot of work. But we do have a lot of other good stuff coming out. We still got to talk about switches, doubling ball handlers, hedges and recovering, icing, all sorts of good stuff like that. So stick with me. Those videos will be out soon. Until next time.
Spin the ball on my finger better than Steph. You have to like and subscribe. And share.